I think that one of the most fascinating chapters in all of church history is, of course, the events surrounding the destruction of Jerusalem. And we don't have a biblical record of that very, very important moment that took place in 70 A.D. But what we do have is a fascinating, blow-by-blow, eyewitness account of the siege of Jerusalem and all of the things that transpired in its destruction, written for us by the famous Jewish historian Josephus. Now, one of the things that surprises me is how few Christians have ever taken the time to read the history of these events that was compiled by Josephus. And every person that I've known who has taken the time to read his Jewish wars has remarked that they were absolutely enwrapped by the reading of this history because it was so fascinating.
So I've been listening to a lot of that. R.C. Sproul talking about what happened in 70 A.D., and he's got a whole series on YouTube, and I think it's from about, I want to say it was 3 or 4 years ago that he did that series. At least that's when it was posted. But it's interesting, and it's interesting for a couple of reasons, because there's and I believe he's a partial preterist. I don't think he's a full preterist from some of the things I've heard him talk about. But one of the things he really makes it a point to hammer home is that we shouldn't ever really become married to our eschatology, like how we view the end times and our viewpoint on it. And I think for a lot of us, especially those in the truther community and those who wake up to see what this world is and how deception just runs rampant throughout it, we can approach subjects like dispensationalism and preterism, post-mill, a-mill, pre-mill, all of that stuff. I mean, we should really approach it with a sense of humility and the willingness to ask questions and to challenge our own beliefs and what we may have been taught or told. Because I know growing up myself, I grew up with the Left Behind stuff, all of that Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins stuff. I mean, there's so much wrong with that theology and what's taught there. So many things that don't, I can remember hearing I don't know if it was a pastor or somebody I was listening to talking about how the man's face, but the head of a lion, they were trying to say it was like a helicopter, that they saw the man, that John was seeing the man's face, I guess steering the helicopter, and the helicopter blades were giving it the appearance of a lion's mane or something to that effect. And just reading so much into the text and not really just reading the text for what it is. And one of the things, and I know I've listened to so many different takes on it now. I've listened to takes for it, I've listened to takes against it, and one of the things that has been said multiple times is you have to take the text and the audience that it is being written to, and that's absolutely the truth. When Daniel had his prophecy, and I believe it's Daniel 9, I'm not 100%, don't quote me on that, but when he gave his prophecy about the end of the age, and it says to seal up this scroll until it's time. And then in Revelation, when John receives basically the same prophecy, it says, don't seal up this scroll because the time is at hand. To me, that's pretty clear. There's not much room for debate there. So what my focus has been is going back to 70 AD, and this is something Sproul has kind of talked about a good bit in the teaching, has been on the lack of understanding by just regular church folk, good old Christians that go to church every Sunday. We have no idea what happened in 70 AD. And that goes from me, who studied apologetics. I knew the writings of Josephus. I've heard of him. I know who Tacitus is. But yet, I had no idea some of the things that happened and that were given a historical account by these people that we should know. We should know this stuff. And I had no idea. This entire time, like this dispensational doctrine is just peddled all throughout Baptist churches and Pentecostal. I mean, it's rampant right now. And nobody's teaching what actually happened from 66. Well, I mean, you can go back early. I think there were some things happening in 63 as well. But that 7-year period, that block of time right around 70 AD, where these events are happening, and these events tie directly to some of the prophecy that is given. When Jesus, Yahushua HaMashiach, is talking in Matthew 24, the things he's saying, they literally line up to exactly what happens in 70 AD. There's very little denying that he's talking about the temple coming down. There's no way he's not referring to that. You can't read it really any other way. I mean, if you subtract all of the teachings that we've been indoctrinated with growing up in the church, you take that away and you read it with a fresh mindset of like, hey, well, who is he talking to, and what's he talking about? And then read what happened. And you can't arrive at another outcome or another scenario other than like, hey, he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. I think that's what he's talking about. So that's kind of been where my mind was at in approaching this millennial kingdom stuff. And this is another point that there's been so many channels now. There's been several channels that have come out, big channels that are very much against this idea, this notion that Christ returned and reigned for 1,000 years. Now, I know some are kind of taking the spiritual amillennials approach, and that's kind of where I was at, and it's kind of still somewhat there. But some of my thinking about it has changed because of just researching what happened in 70 AD. So I get some of that. I get that thinking. I get that mindset. But there's this cognitive dissonance that starts to kick in, and you can kind of hear it. I know for a fact that's what it was in Ron's first video, the Truth Unedited video, where he attacked preterism full blown, then took down that video and then came back with the second video that was a little bit less. It was still problematic, and he never addressed some of the stuff some of the words of the Messiah that were spoken directly in Matthew. I think there were some in Mark as well, but he didn't really address that. But he went with some of the Old Testament scripture that talks about. I honestly think that was talking about the coming back to Jerusalem after being in captivity and in Babylon and all. But I guess that's another debate. You can say, well, yeah, that's talking about that, but it's also talking about the end times and things that are happening there. But either way, there's been a number of channels that have come out and in seemingly opposition to this idea and this notion. And I will say Will's latest video, I completely understand what he's attacking. He's attacking this notion that there was this utopian free energy steampunk utopia Jules Verne style world that was basically covered up. And there are some New Age elements, and there's New Agers that have run with that, but New Agers run with Flat Earth. I mean, if you watch The Lost History of Flat Earth, it touches on a lot of that Tartaria stuff, a lot of New Age topics that are touched on in there. But at the same time, we ignore some of the Christian-based, the biblical-based channels that do address some of those issues from a Christian standpoint and talk about them, and they're just asking questions. A lot of them, like Paul from Understanding Conspiracy, he's just asking questions. That's all I'm doing is asking questions. So I would just say, like, to anyone that's really digging into this, start with 70 AD. Start with the historical accounts of what happened there, and then move into some of the Tartaria stuff and the mud floods, and a lot of that speculation. But there definitely is something hidden there. They're definitely hiding some sort of historical account. Now, what it is, I don't know. That's where some of the speculation, some of that theory comes in. But to simply say, oh, no, it couldn't be that Christ ruled on earth or reigned on earth, whether it be in a city, New Jerusalem, that's in the clouds. There's always been accounts of cities appearing in the clouds, or a city in the cloud. Throughout history, there's these different, I know there's some in the Chinese folklore, but a lot of mythology has basis in truth, and we know that. But again, I just ask, like, how great is the deception that we're born into? How great is it that we would consider, flat Earth is a deception, that we're willing to consider that there has to be some sort of global conspiracy. There has to be, something there that they're hiding. But we would say, oh, no, they're not hiding anything about the millennial kingdom. That's not possible. That's just where I caution people. Like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater on this stuff. So anyway, take care, guys. God bless.